Hello! I'm a person who asserts that the length expansion is correct, not the length contraction in the theory of relativity. Today we're going to screen it in the heading of Principle of Constancy of Light Velocity, GPS, and Length Contraction. Let's talk about the contents posted today. The major theme is Principle of Constancy of Light Velocity, GPS, and Length Contraction. In detail, we will first look at the GPS basic information, followed by relativistic effects found in GPS, special relativistic effects found in GPS, principle of constancy of light velocity with GPS, Mulan paradox with GPS, and the opinions of GPS experts. Well, at first, in the information of GPS basics. GPS was installed by the U.S. Department of Defense. It's used by many people today for car navigation, for example. But the GPS system is still being used primarily for U.S. military purposes. This GPS transmits radio signals from space, which is the speed of light. There are at least 24 satellites set in the universe, and their altitude is about 20,000 kilometers. 4 satellites are placed in each of the 6 orbits, and the entire Earth is surrounded like a sphere. However, because the satellite's orbital position is spherical with respect to the Earth at an altitude of 20,000 kilometers, they are arranged so that they can communicate with each other regardless of the person's location on Earth. GPS satellites are equipped with a selenium atomic clock. Therefore, GPS satellites can be seen as a floating clock in the cosmos. These atomic clocks are used to measure distance and time accurately. GPS satellites use the ECI coordinate system or the ECEF coordinate system. The ECI coordinate architecture is a system with the center of the Earth mass as the original point of coordination that applies Newton's law. And ECEF coordinate system is Earth's center, Earth fixed. This is not an inertial space because they measure the rotation. There is this difference between the two coordinate systems. Because if you look at the ECEF coordinate system, located at the center of the Earth's interior, this is the origin of the coordinate system. Therefore, it will be the origin of coordination in the innermost of the Earth. So, when you look at the inside of the Earth illustrated here, there is the origin of the coordinate of the innermost inside. These satellites are not error-free even if they are considered accurate. But these are errors due to various causes and technical problems. However, the errors of these satellites that we are interested in today are the GPS clock error. It is the satellite time information error which occurs when the signal is transmitted to the satellite and the Earth. So this includes relativistic errors. Therefore, our concern is to exclude all other errors. We need only to look at a satellite clock error and the more relativistic error, specifically the special relativity error. These GPS satellites are running fast, and because they are located in the Earth's gravitational field, they will show a general relativistic effect. The following graph shows the general relativity effect caused by the inclusion of the green line in the gravitational field of the Earth, and the red line here shows the effect of the GPS satellite running at a speed of 4 kilometers per second. GPS satellites are very slow compared to the speed of light, but they are very fast when you compare to our normal GPS day-to-day use. So this represents a special relativistic effect. Combining the general relativistic effects and special relativistic effects will appear as a comprehensive effect. The blue here represents the overall relativity effect. The relativistic errors that appear in one day are as follows. Here, the blue shows us a slowdown of 7.1 microseconds by special relativistic effects in a day, and it is about 45 microseconds faster by regular general relativistic effects for same time. As a result, the total relativistic must be 38.6 microseconds faster. But what I'm interested in today is only to see the effect of slowing down to about 7.1 microseconds by special relativity. Well, This is the GPS satellite running in space like this, and the speed is about 4 kilometers per second. This GPS satellite produces a special relativistic error of about 10.4 meters a year. Because if the error is calculated to 2.13 kilometers per day, which is based on the speed of radio waves, it is that the error of this 2.13 kilometers, which only will be from the special relativistic effect. It is almost useless as a GPS navigation. Therefore, it is necessary to adjust accurately these errors. The GPS is running at 4 kilometers with respect to the Earth, which is running around the globe. Let's look at the straight line section for a closer look. Of course, there is no kind of a perfect straight line section, but if you zoom in on the full path, you can assume an approximate straight path. In the non-relativistic case, it runs only as far as the blue bar, but in the case of relativistic theory, it becomes longer distant runs caused by time delay. And so it is to be run at a longer distance as the extended time. This is not a fictional theory that has been shown only in a school, but it is a real phenomena, an actual phenomena, an observed fact, and it is a truth that is obvious to us. But we must explain this somehow. When it is explained well, the actual phenomena is a good theory. But if it cannot be explained well, it will be a bad theory. And that's a fact. In a non-relativistic theory cases, it runs a short distance like this blue bar. Yet, if it is applied to the time delays, it can go a mere long distance because it runs for a much longer time. And when you understand it by the length, you can run a longer distance caused by the expansion of the length. It can be explained that way. However, if you think the length contraction is correct according to the existing theory, we cannot explain the phenomena that actually happens in GPS satellites. The GPS satellites go 2.84 centimeters more daily, which cannot be explained by the theory of length contraction. The length contraction theory has many problems by the theory that it could not explain the actual phenomena. Looking at GPS satellites in detail, GPS satellites run at 4 kilometers per second for the Earth, and 30 kilometers per second for the Sun, and 700 kilometers per second for the cosmos background radiation. We need to think about this in a special relativistic theory way. In Japan, Masanori Sato calculated the speed of GPS satellites at 700 kilometers per second, assuming that cosmic background radiation was an absolute stationary frame. He thought that if length contraction occurred as a real phenomena, it would certainly be observable. So he calculated and performed observations. It is as follows. The Virgin constellation, Earth, and 2 satellites are circling the universe. There will be times when the 2 satellites are arranged in a straight line as the satellite circulates around the Earth. When 2 satellites, Earth and Virgo stars, are arranged in a straight line, we thought that length contraction should occur. When it is to be arranged in a line like this, if the length contraction theory is correct, the Earth must contract. It was thought that by special relativistic effects corresponding to the speed of 700 kilometers a second, the length contraction effect of about 54 meters should be found. However, as a result from observations, Sato never found the effect of length contraction from the standpoint of modern relativistic theory. Sato's claims and observations are problematic. This is because there is no evidence that cosmic background radiation is an absolute stationary frame. Sato insisted that the effect of length contraction of 54 meters should be observed, but this error of 54 meters was not found. This unfound error of 54 meters can be considered to have the meaning to confirm that the cosmic background radiation is not in an absolute stopping system. And now, we have to think one more thing. Regardless of the result of Sato's observations, we need to simulate this situation where GPS satellites run at 4 kilometers a second Earth, 30 kilometers a second Sun, and 700 kilometers a second for cosmic background radiation. Because the Earth is running at 700 kilometers per second for cosmic background radiation, the gamma value is 1.00054. It takes 0.00666 seconds to send a signal from 20,000 kilometers in space to Earth. If you look at the red box underneath here, if the time delay and length contractions are correct, it should be increased by 0.18 microseconds and reduce the length by 54 meters. In this case, the velocity of light can never be the speed of light. It can never be the speed of light. What happens with this? What can you do with this contradiction? Is there a way to explain this? At present, there is no way in theory. There is no way. But there is only one way to solve this contradiction. If it is not the length contraction, but the expansion of the length is correct, all these problems are solved. Here, there is the velocity of light represented as c. If, like this yellow is shown, light contracts in length, it decreases by 54 meters. When 54 meters is expanded, the speed of light is still held constantly at the speed of light. Under the assumption that this is correct, the principle of constancy of light velocity and the time delay, GPS is not a length contraction, but a length expansion. This is fact, what has been observed exactly. If any theory is inconsistent with nature, it must be reconsidered. In fact, length contraction is not a theory of relativity, but a classical ether theory. On the other hand, theory of length expansion can be said to be part of the correct theory of relativity in length theory. So let's take a look at the principles of constancy of light velocity and GPS essentially. Here, I wrote the data in turn. I'm going to give it a try by summarizing the speed of the Earth, Sun, and the cosmic background radiation. In this case, if the GPS satellite were stopped, the time it takes for light to travel 20,000 kilometers, written here in lime green, you can see the speed of light settles at 300,000 kilometers a second. And so here in red is the amount of the length contraction that Montanari was trying to figure out. If the length contraction here is correct, then the calculated light speed will be decreased gradually in this way. The faster the speed of the GPS satellites, the velocity of light reduces gradually as shown in the graphs at the point of 300,000 kilometers a second. Through this, Montanari said there is incompatibility between the principle of consistency of the speed of light and the Lorentz contraction in the GPS experiment. According to the theory of length expansion, even if any inertial system is stationary and thought to be related to the Earth or to the cosmic background radiation, it will always be uniform in terms to the speed of light. If the theory of time expansion related to length contraction is correct, the speed of light will decrease the speed faster. However, if the time delay for length dilation theory is correct, the speed of light is always constant, shown in the graph, regardless of the relative speed of the visibility here on the monitor. So we can say that observation results and theories are exactly corresponded. This is not difficult. It is not difficult at all. If you look at the unit length in units of minutes here, the denominator keeps growing and the numerator keeps getting smaller. Therefore, the speed of light cannot be the speed of light naturally. In the case of length expansion theory, however, the denominator becomes larger as the numerator becomes larger. Is this right? When time is delayed, the length also expands, so that the speed of c can be maintained as a constant naturally. Let's take a look at this video. Let's look at a situation that shoots light from the satellite to the ground like this. When the GPS satellites are running fast and gamma values are 1.0, 1.5, and 2.0 respectively, and when the gamma value is 1.0, the speed of light is constant, but the speed of light will slow down as the gamma increases. When the gamma value becomes 2.0, it is confirmed that the speed of light is significantly slowed down. Is it much slower? In all three cases, when the light is fired all at once, the light is fast when gamma is 1.0 in the left. But when the gamma is 2.0, the light did not come back. However, the theory of length expansion has a different result. When gamma is 1.0, 1.5, or 2.0, the speed of light is always running at the same speed. So let's see what happens when three satellites fire at once. The speed of light is constant, even if the light is shot all at once. Time dilation and length expansion occur together. So the time to arrive after the light travels is different in all three cases. This is in good agreement with the basic spirit of relativistic theory. Next, let's take a look at the muon paradox. It is very important which one will be the standard among Earth and the muon. Which is the standard? First, I'm going to look for the essence of the muon paradox. It is the point of the muon paradox that there is no possibility to reach the surface of the sea because its particles have a short life, but they do actually reach the surface of the sea. This is called muon paradox, which is currently described as a time delay. But there is also a way to explain it as a length contraction. Here, we will know how to explain by length contraction. In this case, while it is interpreted that the muon has stopped and the Earth rushes to the muon like this, so the Earth contracts. The length expansion theory interprets that the Earth with relatively stationary. The length expansion theory interprets that Earth is relatively stationary and the muon rushes so that the length expands as it reaches the sea surface. In other words, in the case of the theory of length contraction, the expansion is interpreted differently, as the Earth is still and the muon rushes. If it is correct to think the muon paradox is a length contraction, it should be possible for the satellite to remain stationary and the Earth to turn. Is this right? But it does not make sense. It is consistent with our common sense that the Earth is still and the satellites are turning like this. Regarding GPS satellite issues, it cannot be interpreted in the opposite way, such as the interpretation of muon paradox as length contraction. As in the theory of length contraction, this cannot be interpreted as the muon is central and stationary and the Earth rushes and contracts, because it is obviously known to use the ECEF coordinate system, and because it uses Earth-centered, Earth-fixed coordinate system, the Earth is clearly centered, and this case, not the satellite. And is this right? If you use this Earth-centered, Earth-fixed coordinate system, like this, the muon can hardly reach the surface. If the theory of length contraction is correct, the muon certainly cannot reach the surface. It cannot reach theoretically. However, if you look at the natural phenomena, actually, it goes down like this and reaches the Earth's surface. This is a natural phenomena observed. Is that right? And then let's look at this, which is related to GPS satellites. It has to run a short distance, but it actually runs longer. So this blue box is a relativistic effect on GPS satellites. As you can see, it has increased. Therefore, the special relativistic effect of fast-running muon particles is apparently a length expansion. Since the Earth is the center ECEF coordinate system, thinking in relationship with the GPS satellites, Earth is the center. The GPS satellites and the muon had run fast. Isn't that sure? If so, it should be explained that the muon had run fast so that the length had expanded and then reached sea level. The interpretation of the expression cannot be introduced about GPS satellites. As muon is stopping, the Earth has contracted and it reached the sea level. The interpretation of the twin paradox is comparatively well theoremed. Let's say that a frame belonging to one of the twins who return from space travel is named a rocket frame, and a frame belonging to another one of the twins on Earth is named a lab frame. Let's apply the relationship between rocket frame and the laboratory frame about various other experiments. Here are some of the famous experiments of relativistic theory. In the Half-Keating experiment, the Earth is the laboratory frame and the plane is the rocket frame. The Earth is also a laboratory frame in the case of the twin paradox. However, only the interpretation of the muon paradox, which is interpreted as a length contraction, that claims the muon is a laboratory frame. This is inconsistent with the conclusions of other experiments. It is correct for Mulan and the Earth to change positions. If the Earth becomes a laboratory frame like this, it is reasonable to interpret that the Mulan ran fast, the length was expanded because the length has expanded so that it reaches sea level. And if it interprets as a length expansion, just like the conclusions of other experiments, the Earth will become the laboratory frame. So let's take a listen to the opinion of GPS experts. The data on GPS satellites are very accurate because they are used for military purposes. Of course, the atomic clock is a very accurate device too. Here, Niels Ashby, the ultimate authority on the relativistic effects of GPS, said as follows: "I ignore Lorentz length contraction was intentional. In fact, length contraction is not important. GPS is an important system that has timing." However, from what I understand, no matter how he tried, he could not find it. It is impossible to detect Lorentz contraction because it is a phenomena that does not really exist. Then he is a person working at Honda Electronics. Masanori Sato in Japan, who said, "The principle of constancy of light velocity and length contraction collide with each other, so the length contraction was not found at the GPS. If there is a Lorentz contraction, the GPS cannot work so precisely." He says, "By introducing these coordinate systems, such as the ECI or the ECEF coordinate system of Earth-centered into GPS, I was able to say that all relativistic effects can be explained well in the Earth-centered. In the interpretation of the twin paradox, the assumption is that the laboratory frame is the Earth, so the contradictory situation never arises. When comparing small objects on Earth, there is no contradiction when the Earth is considered a laboratory frame." Then, Robert van Kuhe argues that it is not the anisotropic length contraction that is predicted by the Lorentz transformation, but rather anisotropic length expansion has been observed. It is actually explained that the length expansion was observed, not the length contraction. It is natural that the length contraction is not to be found at the GPS because length contraction is a phenomena that does not exist in the real world. So the length contraction is a classical ether theory, and the length expansion is a part of the modern relativistic theory. That's why these results come out of course. Here I have looked at principle of constancy of light velocity, GPS, and length contraction. If you think I have something logically wrong in the contents, I would greatly appreciate if you would leave your comments.